Welcome home. In this podcast, we venture into what it means to be a leader in this new world. Human, flawed but working on things, and forever changed by using our intuition to guide us. I'm Adelina East, founder of Transformational Healing and mentor to those running soul-based businesses. Join me to receive transformational healing, tips to dive more deeply into your unique spiritual gifts, and to hear great conversations with other entrepreneurs in spirit. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cosmic Leadership Podcast. I'm so happy to be with you today. We get to talk to Dr. LJ Johnson. She is a holistic endo expert. You just heard me tell you all of the amazing things about her in the intro. But I also just wanted to say thank you to Dr. LJ for helping me so much with my endometriosis and adenomyosis journey. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I hate that we meet right when we're suffering, but it's something about when you find your community and your jam and just your people to support you. It's huge, right? Like it takes a village. We joke about it, but it honestly takes a village.
It really does. Can you just, for our listeners, for those who might not know what it is, can you explain what endometriosis and adenomyosis are?
Yeah. So let's start with endometriosis, right? Which is almost like supercala. What's going on? I know you can say endo for short. We are not going to be offended. So endometriosis is kind of a stacker. So I'm going to stack this definition. Endometriosis is chronic systemic inflammation throughout the entire body. So that is everything can be inflamed. So the things that I will say in the very beginning, chronic systemic inflammation throughout the entire body, it is uterine-like tissue found outside of the uterus. And I'm going to pause on that one because usually people are like, whoa, pump the brakes. I thought it was a period problem. It is not a period problem. You are not a weak woman. This is not just the cross that we bear because we have a uterus. Endometriosis is uterine-like tissue found outside of the uterus. It has autoimmune-like factors. Those endometriosis lesions bring their own progesterone and estrogen to the table. Not quite testosterone, so I apologize for that, but it does bring progesterone and estrogen to the table. You have that pain and inflammation. You also have those autoimmune-like factors. Now, endometriosis does exacerbate any type of hormone issues, right? So it can cause period pain, murder scene periods, all of those types of things, but it is not a gynecological issue. So once again, endometriosis is chronic systemic inflammation throughout the entire body, uterine-like tissue found outside of the uterus. Those uterine-like tissue lesions that we call them bring their own hormones to the table. You have pain, inflammation throughout the entire body with those autoimmune-like factors. And then it does have that hormonal component, which is where it gets most of our attention, right? Because those were some of the first symptoms that we had. Now with adenomyosis or adeno, or some people call adeno, I believe is how they pronounce it, is pretty much the tissue inside of the uterus, right? So a lot of people have endometriosis, which is uterine-like tissue outside of the uterus. Then we have adeno, which is the thickening of the lining, which is inside of the uterus. And did I mention you could have both, right? It's not a toss-up. It's not if you have one, you're never going to have the others. I do have probably 6 patients in my office right now that have adenomyosis, endometriosis, PCOS, and fibroids. And I'm now starting to see more come in with the 4. It used to just be the trifecta, endo, PCOS, and fibroids. And then all of a sudden now we're bringing in the adeno. So at the end of the day, we are not defined by those diagnoses, but it is important to get that diagnosis to really help you build your team, it's really a team because there's not one diagnosis I've ever heard of that you only need one person. You're going to need a team. You're going to need a lot of resources.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get interested in all of this? Because it's people just started talking about endometriosis maybe 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So let's put it this way. Your girl got real interested at 14 years old when I was debilitated by pain. It was definitely an interest, right? So 14 years old, I love how you put that. Like, what brought you in? My own pain. I essentially turned my own pain into my passion. And I know that's not for everyone, but that is my story. At the age of 14 years old, it started off as the basic period pain. And
Mhm.
I come from a, strong military family, a strong Black woman family, a very religious family. My parents were pastors. So I was getting the religion, I was getting the Marine, the strong Black woman speech. I was getting all the speeches, right? And I say
Yeah.
that because all those speeches combined was we don't complain about pain, right? We drink water, we're tough, this is what we do, we're Marines, we're Christians, if we have an issue, we lean into our faith. And I think all of those things are amazing. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, but I needed more than that. There was
Yeah.
something wrong with my body. I felt broken. I felt like I'd done something bad to deserve this pain. Love my mother and never trying to throw her under the bus, but I always say this is very interesting. For her, she could not relate. And I say this because many of you are dealing with this pain and you're like, my husband doesn't get it. My partner doesn't get it. My family doesn't get it. I recently had a patient and it was interesting working with her. I want to throw this in. I met with her mother-in-law and she sat with us and just was like, oh my God, she was in tears. And so I paused for a second and I was like, oh, I hope I haven't offended you. And she's like, I just thought my son had married a bad one. And I will
Oh,
never forget, gives me chills. I'll never forget. She's like, I just assumed he just picked a bad one, And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, she didn't
heart-wrenching.
clean. She doesn't cook. I know, almost brings me to tears. I'll never forget this. She was like, she doesn't clean. She doesn't cook. She doesn't take care of the grandbabies. She's like, oh, I'm about to start crying. Like it just, I couldn't
That is
believe it. And I was
awful.
like, that's what people think about us. They think
Yeah.
we're a bad batch. They think that we're lazy. If you have PCOS and you're always tired, they're like, oh, she's just lazy. She just needs to lose weight, right? If you have endo and you're doubled over with what I call the murder scene periods, it's like, oh, she just has a uterus. Everyone else has a period. Why does she have to miss work? And it's like, you have no idea what is a period for one person where they can pop a Tylenol and a Midol and they're having a great day. For
Mhm.
other people, they're like on a class 4 narcotic and still not able to move, not
Yep.
able to sleep, eat, drink, all of that aside. I will never forget my mother was just like, I don't have period pain. Your
Oh,
grandmother didn't have it. I don't have it. She didn't think it was
wow.
real. I had a neighbor bring me home one day because I was in debilitating pain at 14 years old. And I showed up and my mother was actually there. And she was like, oh, I heard your voicemail, but I just didn't think it was that big of a deal. She let me change clothes because I bled through my clothes. She took me back
Yeah.
to school, and I'll never forget. I knew after that, I was not allowed to complain about the pain. So the
Oh.
fact that when I had my period, I had rectal bleeding and nosebleeds, I thought that was
Mhm.
normal. Like when I found out you didn't bleed from every orifice in your body when you had your cycle, like I was like,
Yeah.
I thought I
I
was
was
smart, but
shocked.
I was
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? I'm like, everyone else doesn't have these nosebleeds. Like, I thought that was normal.
I
Like,
did
that was
too.
my world. So
Yeah.
that was, 16 years of chasing a diagnosis, going to school, getting this education, having a little bit of alphabet soup, I call it, degrees behind my name, and still begging and pleading and crying for answers. And I'll never forget when the doctor, he was just like, well, what do you want us to do? I want you to tell me what's wrong with me,
Right.
right? I
And the
need
hard
you to
thing
make
is,
it
regular doctors have no idea. Even now, you can go to your primary care physician and explain what's happening. They're like, oh, it's just your period. It'll be
right,
okay.
right. And then when you don't want to do birth control, they're like, well, what else do you want us to do? And
Right.
so that is why I do what I do, because I suffered in silence for years. One second I was on the news giving you 5 tips to be the healthiest person in Colorado. And then the next second I'm on the bathroom floor bleeding out, texting a neighbor, asking them to get my kids ready for school, on top of getting their own children ready for school, right? It
Mhm.
was either I'm 100% or I'm like down and out for the count and MIA. And I got tired of it. I
Mhm.
just literally got tired of it. I say it all the time, and I'll even just make this note. Hysterectomy is not a cure for endometriosis, but
Yep.
that's how it's sold. And I was
Mhm.
at a place where I bought the lie. I thought it was going to cure me. I never had the hysterectomy, but I'm always transparent. I booked the appointment. I was ready to go. But as I began to do more research, they couldn't get me in for 8 months. I realized that there were tons of people, and not just one or two people, because people are like, oh, I'm like, no, I'm talking about tons of white paper, tons of research that was like,
Mhm.
this isn't a cure. And I'm like, whoa.
Right.
I was thinking this was the end of the rope. Like I was honestly giving up and I was willing to have everything yanked out and I would just pull my life together. And then to realize that there were people that were like, I don't have any of my lady parts and I still cramp and I still bleed. I'm like, oh, hold it. That the math isn't mathing. I'm like, I need a little more information. And that's when I realized that was a misconception. And so in that whole that's my Reader's Digest version of my story. Trust me, there's a lot longer version. But in all of that, I was like, I have to take my life back. Right. Like, I have to stop trusting someone else. Nothing against the white coat. We love the white coats, but I couldn't trust a 6 or 7 minute appointment to tell me how to solve a 24/7 problem that was killing me. Right. I could not show up for my children. I could not show up in my career. I had to close my private practice. And I know for some people, they're like, well, you should be lucky you even had a business. But as a single mother, as I was the breadwinner, if I was not working, I hadn't quite tapped into all the residual income and all those amazing things. Like, I had to physically show up to work to be paid. And if I couldn't show up, I didn't have a business. I couldn't provide for my children. So for me, I had to shut my private practice, do some retraining, really lean into functional medicine. And that's where I realized where conventional is amazing. If you break your arm, you break your leg, you need a surgery. Yeah, we can tell you herbs and vitamins and homeopathics, but you probably need to go see an ortho, right? You need to get that taken care of. I think it's great for acute issues. But many of you listening to this podcast, managing a chronic illness, it's chronic. Their system is not set up for a chronic illness. I always say it. I cannot cure endo. There is no cure, but I definitely speak from my heart when I say it's in remission. It is no longer an issue for me. The murder-scene periods, the cramping, the bleeding, like my period's a 0 factor. If I wanted to wear white leggings, sometimes I do it just because I can, because there's so many years that I couldn't, right? I'm like, screw you. I'm like, I'm just showing you what time it is. Because I was the person that bought a new couch and bled through her couch.
Yeah,
right? That's a hard conversation to have with them. I know I just bought this couch, but do you guys have somewhere that I can dispose of it? And can I get another one? Like, a manager felt so bad, gave me half off. I mean, like, he felt bad for me. Like, I bled through my new couch. So to be that person debilitated by pain, not being able to function, to come to the other side, I had to switch my private practice. I couldn't go back to telling people, balancing your hormones, work out 2 hours a day and that's going to balance your hormones. Well, if that was the case, mine would have worked, right? I couldn't go back selling chicken breast and broccoli is going to help you keep the weight down and manage the hormones. Well, that wasn't working for me. So I really had to have that whole come to Jesus where what I was doing was working for a while, but it's no longer working. And then to be able to go on, I'm kind of old school, right? So I was back on like MySpace and Baby Center and forums. That's how I was like figuring out what was wrong with me back then and realizing so many people had been lied to, thinking that a pregnancy was going to cure endo, that, having a baby or hysterectomies, all of those things. That's like the longest answer ever. But that is why I do what I do, because I was that person who suffered in silence, who didn't have the resources, that was afraid, to talk about it. The person that I remember a friend was like, we don't even invite you anymore because you can't come. And it's like, how do you tell people that I'm a reliable person? I want to be in your wedding, but my body may change its mind and I might not be able to walk tomorrow. I'm just letting you know, but I'll surely sign up to be a bridesmaid. When you're looking to manage a chronic illness, no matter what it is, you have to have a team that's going to fight for you to get that quality of life. And I think that's where a lot of us get really discouraged, because we have a team over here basically saying, take the pills. If you don't want to take the pills, we can't help you. And then we've got, us over here. We're like, okay, we've done the pills. We're still dealing with the side effects of the pills and we still need quality of life. What can you do for us?
Right. Yes. And that is what I work with most days, that pain and all of those things. And I have to say, as a mental health care practitioner, I work with a lot of women who have endometriosis or PCOS or fibroids, or are dealing with unresolved infertility, which is like the hip diagnosis for, hey, you probably have endometriosis, but we'd rather not open you up to diagnose you. So we're just going to call it unresolved. And I think along with all of the physical symptoms that you are so very right on about, that I experience, I think the other thing is the mental strain, having the friend who doesn't want to have you in your wedding because you might not be able to show up, leaving your practice. I had Lyme disease and mold illness and still deal with those things, still working through it. and endo and adeno on top of it. And so I also had to leave a job that I loved behind and start something new. And I think that is the story for so many of us with chronic illnesses. But it helps me so much to hear you say the words that you're in remission and you could even wear white leggings on your period. That is a bygone era for me. But Dr. LJ, can you share with us some of these amazing things that helped you? I know you can't go person by person, of course, but what are some of the things that help you the most?
So one of the biggest things for me was my toxin bucket. And so before I break down the toxin bucket, I want you to kind of think about, if you're listening and if you can, if you're not driving, like close your eyes and think about whatever health issues you're dealing with. Right. And most of it's going to be tied around some type of itis or inflammation. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's endometriosis, not endometriosis itis, but it's definitely still chronic systemic inflammation throughout the entire body. Yeah. So when I started to really assess my toxin bucket, and when you think about a toxin bucket, I mean, just think of a bathtub, a sink, a glass on the counter, right? When it starts to overflow, that's when the floor gets wet, your counter gets wet, you know, when you spill the paint. So the same thing with your body, when your toxin bucket gets full, that's when you have the endo flare. That's when you have the acne, the bloating. So if we can decrease the toxin bucket, right? Because remembering endometriosis is a chronic fire that's always burning 24/7. Either you're doing things that are going to decrease your fire, drinking water, pooping 2-3 times a day, taking your supplements, movement, stretching, right? That's decreasing your fire. Or, you know, yesterday was Super Bowl and maybe you had a little too much to drink, right? Maybe you were at wasted management here in Scottsdale doing the most all weekend, right? Drinking all the fun drinks, your toxin bucket's overflowing, right? Today you may have a hangover. Today you may be bloated. You're not feeling great. So what I start to do is look at my toxin bucket. So for me, I'm going to start with the most one that people don't think of, was really assessing the people I spend time with. Assessing relationships. Yes. You know, I was in a marriage, and I will never say that my marriage caused my endo, because that was not it, but it was toxic. It was not working for me. And being able to separate from that relationship, separate from even business relationships that I've been in recently in the last 5 or 10 years that weren't working for me, decreased my cortisol and really helped me balance my hormones, right? Anyone can take a bunch of supplements and vitamins and, you know, do the sauna and the Epsom salt and all that. But if you're in a toxic relationship, it's not going to work for you. I can also attest to the whole mold and Lyme. I've not personally dealt with Lyme to my knowledge, but the mold exposure is very real. Nearly lost my life, not once, not twice, but 3 times due to mold exposure. Endometriosis, I thought of that when you said it, it decreases your immune system. So the wind could blow and you're like, gosh, I'm always sick, versus someone else is like, oh, my kids have been sick all month and I'm, you know, fit as a fiddle, versus, you know, us, it's like something can just waft past us and we're like, oh God, here we go, right? Your body's like, hope you're ready, because there's no immune system. So being able to assess my environment, I was living in mold, right? It wasn't that I was in a horrible rundown apartment. I was in a beautiful home, right? That had conveniently 4 feet of water gathered under it. I've had leaks that weren't addressed, different things like that. So for me, the endometriosis was an issue, but assessing the things that were in my toxin bucket, the people I spend time with, working with my air quality, which is huge, huge. A lot of people have excision surgery by some great surgeons. I'm not saying the surgeon was the issue, but then they're like, I felt better in the hospital. Well, it's probably because you had better air quality. And then you come home and you sit in the mold and different things like that, the gram-negative bacteria, some of those pathogens that are kind of wreaking havoc in your body. Another thing is, I hate to use the word detox, but it's true. I had to find like my way to endo detox. And I say that very loosely, because I know as soon as I say that, people are going to be Googling on Dr. Google, like, what is the endo detox? The endo detox, any type of chronic illness detox, looks different for everyone. Simple things that I do in the morning is warm lemon water. Before I would squeeze lemons. Now I'm very much into my essential oils, which I love. And so I do warm lemon water in the morning. Why? Because it helps to turn on my liver, which is my master detoxifier. When I first got diagnosed with endometriosis, I was estrogen dominant. I do want to throw in that caveat. Just because you have endo does not mean you're estrogen dominant. You do need to do some testing rather than guessing. Don't just run on DIM. I know that's like the first thing you hear when you hear endo. Everyone's like, oh, DIM. Right. Once again, if it was that easy, we would have already airdropped DIM to everyone. It'd be better. It's a little more, a little more caveat than that. So I had to open up my liver to really take care of my hormones and take care of the estrogen dominance before just bringing in a bunch of progesterone. So I'm not giving medical advice, but I do want to mention that like supporting your liver will help with your hormones, right? Will help balance things out. The other thing I had to do was really focus on my gut health and food triggers. And I'm going to do gut health first, and then I'll go to the food triggers. So with my gut health, that was a tricky one because endometriosis for a lot of people bring what we call endobelly, right? Endobelly, essentially it's like you feel 9 months pregnant or you look 9 months pregnant. Usually you look and feel, but here's the thing. There is like some heat coming along with that. It's like heat is sometimes generating from your womb area. It's tender to touch, TMI if you want to call it, but it's like you can't even wear a bra. Like it's so tender. The bra, even if it's like wire free, it hurts. You can't wear leggings. You're hanging out in a baggy t-shirt because you're like, that's all I can wear. And even then, if the t-shirt is to touch your stomach, it's like stabbing pain. That is endobelly. I had that for a bit. So that was like, okay, I knew what to do for that. But then I was like, okay, this is not endobelly anymore. And I still look 9 months pregnant. I just drank water and I'm burpy, belchy, gassy. So then I had to start doing a lot of different work on my gut. For me personally, and what I see a lot with endo patients is H. pylori, candida overgrowth. It's all the unsexy stuff. And so what happens is as soon as you have the endo diagnosis, anything that goes with your stomach, you're like, it's endobelly. We just give endobelly. I talk about the endo rug. We just give everything to endo. And I'm not saying that it's not an issue, but I had to realize that this isn't necessarily the endobelly. This is because I've been living in mold and that's why I'm so constipated. Or you know what? I have candida, which is also why I'm dealing with toenail fungus and hormonal acne and dandruff. Like once I started to make all those connections, so it was all about the toxin bucket. Like my body could only take so much. It was like, okay, cool. You want to live in mold for 20 something years? All right. Well, we're going to be so busy cleaning that up. Heaven forbid your body want to get rid of some estrogen. Heaven forbid you want to detox a parasite. Like it's like we can only do so much. And so I had to just like chip away. I hope that's a good answer. I feel like I'm all over with that. So
that's a great
water.
Let me ask a question about castor oil packs, because I know you and I both promote for Queen of Thrones.
I love it.
I use my castor oil pack over my liver one day and then over my lower abdomen the next day. And I use it 6 days a week, and I use it right when I wake up in the morning. What do you think about that timing?
Okay, I'm gonna say this out loud. So use it 6 days a week. Every other day you rotate. So one day liver, one day like pelvic area. So you rotate 1, 2, 1, 2. 6 days a week. You skip one day and you start in the morning.
Yes.
Okay, I got lots to say about this one. Okay, so I love my castor oil pack. I mean, I don't have it on today. Sometimes if my stomach is irritated during the day, I will like at the home office. I don't care at any office. I'll just throw in a bag of t-shirt and have my castor oil pack on. I mean, you may be the person in the airport. You may see me and they're like, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's my detox pack. I just take it with me everywhere, especially when I'm traveling. So what I recommend with the castor oil pack, and let's talk about castor oil. Old school, right? Grandmama, especially as Black girls, grandma was like making us drink it. Any type of like illness, it was like the go-to, right? Like you just had to have it. We've upgraded. We are no longer drinking the castor oil. We are now applying organic castor oil to our womb wellness, our digestive area. What I recommend is using it in the nighttime. So first thing, if you're just getting one today, start slow. Wear it from like 5 to 7 p.m. See how you feel for a few days, because it is a gentle detoxification, right? So it's not going to be like when you take a bunch of pills and you're like, oh, I just pooping my brains out. But it could be. It's going to start coming in there and breaking up lumps, balancing your microbiome. Everyone's individualized. So I don't really know what's going on in your cooker, but there's probably some stuff going on, right? So start from 5 to 7 p.m. Do it for a few days. Then go to 4 hours. If you're like, all right, LJ, I've been doing this for a week and a half. I wear it 5 to 9 every night. I'm not feeling sick. I'm not feeling bloated. Now, if you start to feel like you're having some symptoms, then back down. Do every other day. So I like people to start slow. I always recommend using it more at night. I love daytime if you're still having issues, but my favorite is to sleep with it overnight. That's when your body does most of its detoxification. Whether or not you call yourself on a detox or a diet or whatever, your body is doing a lot of work from midnight till noon the next day, no matter where you're at in the world, right? So for me, I'm Mountain Standard Time. So tonight at midnight till noon tomorrow. So the goal is to maximize that window of natural detoxification, right? That's where, for example, side note, if you wake up from 1 to 3, your liver needs more support. So that's why we're wearing that during the night so that we can support your digestive tract. That's when it's kind of dumping everything. That's why when you don't sleep as well, you have more brain fog, because that's when your brain is actually draining. Everything is moving through. So I would start slow. I would use it in the evening. Now, what I like to do is the first 2 weeks of your cycle, day 1 is the day that you start bleeding. So if you have like a 28 to 30 day cycle, I would say day 1 through 14, use it on your front, on your pelvic area, right? So that's when you're trying to detox inflammation. They have a liver pack and a pelvic pack. I always tell people just to spend $4 more and get the pelvic pack. It covers everything really, like from boobs to pubes. It just covers you all. You're locked and loaded. Spend the extra $4 and you don't have to like finagle. If you have the baby one, it's still okay. So first 2 weeks, you want it right towards the front. Now, weeks 3 and week 4 of your cycle, day 14 to 28, 14 to 30, your body is naturally detoxing. No need to go buy any pills. It's just what your body does. It knows that you need to get rid of toxins. That's when you can slide it more over to the liver. However, if you have the pelvic pack, it's huge. It really covers, depending on, your body size, of course, it covers a lot. Just slide it more to the right. Gosh, I love castor oil packs. I could talk about them all day long. What are some other things I like to do if you deal with chronic fatigue? So let's say you're like, LJ, I'm really gassy. I'm really bloated. I know there's something going on with my stomach. Okay, maybe at night you wear it on the womb wellness on the digestive tract area. Now, maybe during the day, you're like, oh, but I also have chronic fatigue. My cortisol's all over. You're like, I don't know what's going on. I just need some support. You can put the castor oil and rub it on your kidneys and your adrenals to really pull some of the toxins from there. So that's, once again, I can't do short answers. I'm doing my best and I literally can't.
I love it. I love it.
Every answer is like a blog.
That's okay. People are getting so much information. It's so helpful to them. This is why we're here. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would do that in the evenings, work your way up, do it overnight, and then you can do it during the day. Like if I'm traveling, I just wear it more because I'm like doing nothing but in the airport, right? I don't need to look cute for anyone.
What do you recommend for people who want to do gut testing, who worry they may have candida or H. pylori or parasites? What kind of gut tests do you like?
I love the GI map. It's my favorite. Okay. So I know a lot of people are doing the GI map now, but this is what I will say about the GI map. And then I'm going to say this about any testing. If the provider can cover the test in 10 to 15 minutes, I kind of have to push back on that. I'm doing a lot of re-reviews for people. They're like, oh, or I love you guys. I do. But when you do the Dutch test on your own, then you're like, what are all these spokes and wheels? You're like, what? Because you've seen a Dutch test. You're like, what is this?
I had that same reaction. Yeah.
Yes. This is why you need to have someone interpret it for you. And that's why you need to sometimes have us do it. And then also be leery of those, people that are like, oh, we can cover a Dutch test in 10 minutes. There's no way for you to find all the healing opportunities in 10 minutes, especially even with the GI map. Yes, it's going to give you your high level, but there's all these variances and little factors, and you really need to be able to cross correlate that to your symptoms. Because I've had people that, their GI map said no parasites, but then, on the other hand, they're like, I just broke a crown. My teeth are crooked again and I grind my teeth every night. Well, based on what you're telling me, I have to, not to mention parasites aren't just in your gut. They can be anywhere. So we have to really do the cross correlation with the symptoms. So yeah, I love the GI map. I love pooping for science, as Dr. Carey would tell us to do. It's my favorite.
I am so delighted to share with you that I am opening back up my multidimensional mentorship program. We have seen graduates go on to start their own businesses with their intuitive gifts, such as channeling, healing, tarot card reading, astrology, human design, chef, also so many other beautiful professions that are healing the world and making it into the better place where we all want to be. If you are struggling, if you're trying to figure out what your life purpose is, check out my multidimensional mentorship program. I am so excited to work with people who are ready for change, who are ready to dive into their intuitive gifts and see exactly what they're ready to do here on this planet at this time. We will put the link below, and I look forward to hearing from you.
So talk to us a little bit about the joys of infrared sauna. Do you use an infrared sauna?
Yes. So I have two. I have one upstairs
Okay.
and one downstairs. I
Okay.
have sauna, which I love. I use it 5, probably 6 times a week. I don't know. I'm like, let me think of all the stuff I do. Sometimes it's like so part of my routine. I don't even
Yeah,
think
you
of
forget
it.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's think. Warm lemon water in the morning. I'm going to cut me off when you're bored. Let me just run you through.
I will never get bored. Keep going.
So what do? Warm lemon water in the morning, first thing. I do lymphatic massage because I've had a lot of healing opportunities, a lot of trauma and drama as far as dental sinus surgeries.
Mhm.
I've had 4 sinus surgeries, endometriosis lesions removed 3 times. So when I say healing opportunities, a lot going on. I definitely have like some essential oils that I use to really just open it up, because I can tell if I'm not, I'll get like congested. I'll start getting sinus headaches. When it gets full up there, it likes to cause a lot of ear drama. So like that's something I do first thing in the morning. I drink my water, my electrolytes, get my bowels moving. I love coffee enemas as much as I would have never thought I'd be like sticking coffee up my bum. I do it every day and I love it. Love it, love it, love it. I do that. I've been really good with my movement. Old LJ would work out for probably 90 minutes because her mindset was, we just have to do it. That's how we stay lean, mean, and a fight machine. New LJ knows that that's not necessarily, I mean, I sometimes get bored of the gym. I only may work out 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go back and save the world. I'm over the gym. So I do about 30 minutes of movement 5 days a week.
I hear you. I feel like I do about 2.5 hours of stuff in the morning before I even say hello to anyone.
And I like it that way.
Yeah.
I do. I really like it that way. And the days I've skipped that, because I'm like, oh, I've got patience, like I just want to serve my community. I wake up, I see all the DMs and I'm like, okay, do I do my affirmations? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then I'll go. And then it's like, okay, now your nervous system's all jacked up. You took care of everyone else. You didn't take care of yourself.
You have to do you first.
And then it backfires. I'm with you. I'm okay with waking up and first 2.5, 3 hours. I think we have to fill our cup before we fill others. And it could just be me, but when I've done the opposite, it's backfired and messed up my health.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Where
I had to learn the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm okay with the 2.5, 3 hour routine.
Yeah, that's all right. I can meditate during it. I can do my channeling, talk to my guides. It's okay.
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
So can you tell us about opportunities to work with you? Because I know everyone at this point is like, oh, please help me. White leggings on my period. White leggings. What do I have to do to get there?
Come on over, baby. We ready for you. So my biggest thing right now is the hormone restoration program. So like I said, not everyone that has endometriosis is estrogen dominant, but there are a lot of different healing opportunities. And what I've noticed with myself, and I always say with myself, not that it doesn't work on others, but I'm like, if it don't work for me, I'm not going to try to do it on other people. So once it worked for me and then it started working for all my other patients, it's really diving in and looking at their hormones, their immune system, detoxification, your digestion, your immune system, like oxidative stress and energy production, and bringing all of those in to find the healing opportunities, right? And so that program really, it's not saying that your diagnosis isn't important, but I think sometimes we get so hyper-focused on that. Like I just got to lose 20 pounds. It's like, I get that. But if we can take care of toxins, trauma, and inflammation, then the 20 pounds will leave.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. LJ. You are amazing. I feel so honored to have gotten to chat with you today, and I look forward to putting all of your links below this podcast so that we can find you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to these important conversations about cosmic leadership and the changing needs of our times. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also share it with a friend. Join our crew at Adelina East on Instagram or at Adelina East Healing on Facebook. With all the love from every dimension, Adelina.